the real controversy has not had to do with collecting an intelligence at all. It's had to do with quite a different question that has nothing whatsoever to do with intelligence, and that is the secret intervention in the affairs of other countries and the deliberate attempt to manipulate events in other lands. That's not intelligence. The CIA has no right whatever to engage in conspiracies to murder. There's no federal agency that has the right to murder. The President of the United States is not a glorified godfather. And I think it's despicable when one considers that the targets of these conspiracy plots were the presidents or the dictators or what have you of small Latin countries or small African countries that couldn't possibly threaten the United States.
The fact is that CIA didn't have anything to do with the coup at all. We were supporting the democratic groups, media, and so forth, with the idea of sustaining them under the pressure that they were under from President Allende till the elections of 1976, which we hoped they would win. We didn't want a coup. We thought it'd be a mistake to have a coup.
But you were influencing an election.
We had for many years been supporting the democratic groups in Chile to try to win the elections.
But
yes.
and Allende had been actually elected by the electors.
Yes.
And it was their wish that he should be president.
Well, it was the wish of 36% of them, but the fact was that there should have been another election in 1976. And with President Allende announcing to all who would have a question about it that he wanted to link up with Castro and extend the Cuban Revolution to all of Latin America and turn it hostile to the United States, it seemed reasonable that instead of letting that happen and facing some major military confrontation, that we helped some good democratic groups in Chile to win those elections.
The government in Chile was not one of our liking. In fact, it was a wretched government, the Allende regime, but it was a government of the Chileans' choice. And by secretly intervening and assisting in the overthrow of that government, doing everything possible to lay the groundwork for the overthrow of that government, was a very grave mistake. What have we to show for it but a bloodbath, a fascistic government, prisons of Chile filled with political prisoners. And this, of course, is known throughout Latin America, and it's very damaging to us in our dealings with other Latin American countries. I should think this is a prize example of how short-sighted those who become intrigued with covert operations can become.
The CIA was formed at the end of the Second World War. Since then, it's assumed two objectives. First, to collect intelligence and prepare reports on which the government may make decisions. Second, to influence political, military, or economic events. That's what's been called covert action, and it's included financial support for broadcasting stations, paramilitary operations, and bribes and funding political parties in other countries. The CIA is only one part of the United States intelligence community. The other arms, all directly responsible to the President, are the State Department and the Defense Intelligence Agency, which includes military intelligence and the National Security Agency, NSA. And the different departments often disagree over their forecasts, over whether the Americans would win in Vietnam, for instance.
Well, any nation has a capability of action abroad. We have armies and navies and intelligence services and everything else. Of course, every nation has them, and to the degree they think they need them.
Yes, but the Army and Navy has that capability during wartime. You're saying, in the case of the CIA, the intelligence service appeared to have it during peacetime.
Well, I think the Army and Navy also have a role during peacetime, a very distinct role.
Well, not to kill.
Well, I don't know. Was there a war in Vietnam or wasn't there? That was a very complicated problem as to whether there was or not.
Well, there certainly wasn't a war involving Mr. Castro in Cuba, which is what we're talking about.
There was a rather extensive war going on there between the Cuban exiles and Mr. Castro. And,
but not involving the United States, Mr. Colby.
No, they were supported by the CIA and by our government.
Well, that's my point.
With the approval of our president. This was a foreign policy decision. This wasn't just a CIA action.
You say with presidential approval, Now, there is some considerable dispute over whether or not there was executive presidential approval.
Correct, you're correct. I say the overall campaign against Cuba had presidential approval, certainly, the Bay of Pigs and the other activities. The actual attempts against his life, it's very obscure as to the degree who, how high outside of CIA approved it. I know enough of the culture pattern of CIA. I have been the subject of veiled suggestions that somebody be assassinated, that I can well understand that the people at that time undoubtedly thought that they were operating within the limits of policy that, as stated from above.
When you say veiled suggestions that someone should be assassinated, how does that sort of thing happen? I mean, you're sitting in your office.
Not in my office. I was sitting in another office, and people suggested that somebody be assassinated, and I'm not going to identify who or who suggested it, but I turned it off. I said I thought it was wrong. No.
Was it at a senatorial, congressional level
No.
the suggestion was made?
No, it was in the government.
But if things have changed now, as you seem to be suggesting, what are the rules as you see them today?
I don't know about the rest of the world, but the fact is that American intelligence will operate under American law, and we have the structure and the procedures to ensure that at this time.
That's in America?
In America, yes.
What about outside America?
No, under American law, it will operate as to what America's laws say it shall do and shall not do.
It's an open secret that United States embassies all over the world have CIA officers on their staff. The embassy in Grosvenor Square, London, for instance.
Would you abide by British law?
Yes, absolutely, no question about it, for two reasons. First, the closeness of our relationship, and secondly, the fact that there's nothing there to be achieved by any kind of improper activity. Any clandestine activity, whether it be the getting a spy or influencing somebody, has to meet several questions. First, how important is that action to the interests of the United States? Secondly, what is the likelihood that it will be revealed? But thirdly, a very important one, what is the likely impact if it's revealed? And then lastly, what does it cost? How big an operation? But the third one, in my mind, would absolutely bar anything in Britain, because the adverse impact of being involved in some impropriety in Britain on our very close and deep relationship would be so horrendous that you'd be absolutely insane to try it.
CIA officers are American, but our contact is a British national who claims to have joined the CIA after serving with British intelligence. It's these local agents who tread the narrow line between what's legal and what's illegal. I was shown a copy of a letter from 10 Downing Street to Mr. Jack Jones, General Secretary of the Transport and General Workers Union. It concerned trade union activity in South Africa. One of many copies of private letters that our contact had in his possession. This letter was signed by the Prime Minister. Is this a genuine copy of a genuine letter?
Yes.
How did it come into your possession?
It came via an agent that we have infiltrated within a communist organization. It's a liberation group dealing with Southern Africa. It is a photostat copy of a photostat which had been sent to the communist organization.
Which communist organization?
The Communist Party of Great Britain.
So the CIA have infiltrated the offices of the Communist Party of Great Britain?
Of course.
How long, in fact, then, have you been in this position? How long have you infiltrated this organization?
16 years. If anything of importance crops up, whether it be private, personal, or what it does, and it's of interest to the security services of the Western world, then it's as well that we know all about it.
But perhaps it should actually apply in the morality of intelligence, if I can put it that way.
Possibly. But I think in the interests of the Western world, as I said before, anything of interest is of value.
We've got to recognize that in a free society, sooner or later, these tricks come to the surface and they become publicly known. And when that happens, the good name and reputation of the United States suffers. If it's right for us to obey our own laws and to disregard the laws of other countries and intervene at our pleasure elsewhere, then it must follow that it's right for other countries to intervene in our own affairs. And I think we Americans would be the first to object if we felt a foreign country was manipulating our political processes.
Well, I think CIA has learned a few lessons. I think it's less CIA than our nation. because most of the activities that CIA has been criticized about in the past, the political and paramilitary work, were basically governmental decisions. Under the system at the time, they were undertaken by the president and his decision. In a number of them, the Congress knew about the activity at the time and accepted it. Today, I think there's much less desire, interest in that kind of activity, although the Congress in various times has said, well, let's keep the possibility alive. We might need it in the future.
And the retention of this ability means quite simply this: the CIA may still employ men in other countries to represent its interests, to do undercover and possibly illegal work, including our contact.
How do you feel about being employed by a foreign intelligence service in your own land?
I don't call it a foreign intelligence service, but for the Americans there wouldn't be any Western world. So I never look upon the Americans as a foreign intelligence service.
But what if they asked you to break the law of your own land?
But they wouldn't.
Do you think that being in possession of private letters and being involved in listening to telephone calls is actually keeping the law of this land?
Well, there are other people in the opposition that are breaking the law every day.
Nonetheless, to say we are better than them doesn't actually excuse breaking a law.
No, but any kind of weakness, and it would be exploited by the opposition. Therefore, one has to keep a check on everything. Every country will try and get information concerning another's activities. This is standard practice. That is the job.
The CIA will weather this storm, but it must learn that it does not stand above or beyond the law, and that if we ever permit any agency to operate outside the law, we do so at our own peril.